What if the most profound truth about you isn't something you need to learn, but something you need to remember? Imagine for a moment that woven into the very fabric of your being lies a perfect, unblemished knowing of who and what you truly are. Not the labels you carry, not the roles you play, but the raw, boundless essence that predates your birth, that existed before memory began to falter. Have you ever felt that quiet dissonance within? A whisper that life, as you know it, is merely a shadow play, a performance dictated by unseen forces and forgotten scripts? That the ceaseless striving, the endless search for identity and purpose outside yourself, is a path paved with beautiful distractions designed precisely to keep you from turning inward. For millennia, seekers, mystics, and heretics have pointed to this inner core, this dormant luminescence. They spoke of a time when the veil was thinner, when the echo of our cosmic origin was clearer. But history, dear seeker, is a complex tapestry, often woven with threads of suppression and forgetting. What if the structures we inhabit, our schools, our cultures, even the narratives that shape our understanding of reality, are subtly, perhaps unconsciously, engineered to ensure the echo fades into silence? There exists, buried beneath, layers of accumulated identity and societal expectation, a path back. Not a difficult, arduous climb to some distant peak of enlightenment, but a simple, almost embarrassingly direct technique to dissolve the illusion, to peel back the veils and allow the inherent truth of your soul to surface. This journey is not for the faint of heart. It requires courage to confront the scaffolding of the self you have meticulously constructed, the mask you wear for the world, and often for yourself. But I promise you this, the treasure that awaits is not a new personality, but the rediscovery of your original magnificent blueprint. Stay with me. We are about to embark on an investigation not into the external world, but into the deepest, most concealed landscape, your own being. This is more than information. It is an invitation to remembrance. If a spark of recognition flickers within you right now, if a part of you resonates with this ancient call, then know you're exactly where you need to be. Press the like button to signal your readiness. Share your immediate feeling, your first unfiltered thought, in the comments below. That initial impulse often holds a forgotten truth. And subscribe, activate the notifications for this journey of uncovering ... It is just beginning. Are you ready to remember? To remember, beloved traveler, is not merely to recall a distant event, but to remember, to put back together the disparate pieces of a truth fractured by time and circumstance. We are not here to learn who we are, as if identity were a subject taught in some cosmic academy. No, the profound secret lies in the inverse. We are here to remember the being we already are, the essence that existed before the first breath, before the first name, before the world began to tell us who we should be. Think of it. Why is it that the great teachers throughout history, the whispers from the heart of Sabiduria ancestral, often spoke in riddles and paradoxes? Why did they point inwards, towards the silent observer, the unchanging core, rather than outwards, to accumulating knowledge? Because they understood the nature of this journey. It is an excavation, not a construction. It is the lifting of veils, woven from illusion and expectation, that obscure the brilliant light of the soul. A light that has never, could never, truly dim. This forgotten truth is one of the great mysterios occultos, not hidden from us, perhaps, but hidden by us, or rather, by the carefully constructed edifice of the ego, which fears dissolution more than death itself. The ego, in its frantic need to define itself through external validation and learned identity, builds walls around the inner sanctuary where true memory resides. It convinces you that you are the mask, the role, the history, instead of the timeless awareness observing it all. Ancient texts, some whispered, some encoded, Some deemed textos prohibidos because they held keys too potent for the controlling powers of their age. Speak of this original state. The emerald tablet of Hermes Trismegistus, often seen through the lens of material transformation, at its heart describes an alquimia interior, the process of separating the subtle from the gross, the true self from the layers of false identity. It is the work of transmuting leaden forgetfulness into the golden clarity of remembrance, leading to genuine illuminaka spiritual. This isn't about gaining new knowledge. It's about shedding the ignorance that covers what is, already known at the deepest level. Where does this original blueprint reside? It is connected inextricably to the vast web of life, to the very fabric of existence, drawing upon and contributing to the universal current of Energia Cosmica. Your true self is not a solitary island, but an integral part of the continental whole, vibrating with the frequency of the cosmos itself. Remembering is aligning your personal frequency with this cosmic harmony. But how, you might ask, do we begin to remember? If the path isn't learning, what is the method? If the ego is the gatekeeper, how do we bypass its elaborate security system? The answer, like the truth itself, is often found not in striving, but in stillness, not in adding, but in subtracting. It begins with a subtle shift in perspective, a deliberate turning inward, a recognition that the most important journey is the one that leads you back to yourself. Are there techniques, practices, keys that unlock these ancient chambers of memory within? Indeed, but be warned, they are not what you might expect. They are not rituals performed externally, but subtle operations conducted within the laboratory of your own consciousness. They require not belief, but experience. And they begin with a single fundamental act, ... But what is that act? What is the very first key stroke upon the keyboard of your forgotten soul? And so we arrive at the threshold of that question. The very first keystroke, the initial act upon the keyboard of your forgotten soul. If it is not learning in the conventional sense, what is it? What is the fundamental movement? Perhaps the truest first act is not one of doing, but of seeing. Seeing the intricate web woven around you, the delicate yet strong threads of forgetting that bind consciousness to a narrow, dictated reality. For how can one remember if one does not first acknowledge the forces designed to ensure amnesia? Look around you. Observe the grand architecture of the world you inhabit. Are its structures built to foster inner awakening or external conformity? From the earliest moments, you are guided, or perhaps channeled. Education, often hailed as the bringer of light, frequently functions as a sophisticated mechanism of standardization, teaching you what to think, what to value, what is possible, rather than how to truly perceive, how to connect with. The boundless reservoir of Energia Cosmica that fuels existence itself. It is a system designed for efficiency in a machine, not for the flourishing of a unique, sovereign soul. It teaches you the rules of the game, but rarely reveals that the board, the pieces, and the rules themselves were designed to keep you. Playing within a predefined boundary, diverting your attention from the greater reality. Culture, that omnipresent tapestry of shared beliefs and norms, whispers constantly, shaping your identity, your desires, your fears. It defines success in material terms, encourages external validation, and subtly discourages introspection, the deep dive into alquimia interior that reveals true gold. It bombards you with noise, preventing the stillness required to hear the faint echoes of your own forgotten nature. It creates a collective dream, a shared hallucination that feels so real it becomes impenetrable, effectively obscuring the mysterious occultos woven into the fabric of being. Consider the narratives that dominate, the histories that are taught, the knowledge that is sanctioned and disseminated. And then consider what is left out. The whispers of Sabiduría ancestral, often dismissed as myth or superstition. The profound insights found in certain textos prohibidos, or those deemed too dangerous, too disruptive to the established order, conveniently lost or locked away from the prying eyes of the masses. Throughout history, the control of knowledge has been paramount to maintaining power structures. What if the greatest power structure is the control over your own consciousness, managed by feeding you a reality specifically curated to prevent your Illumina Ka spiritual? These systems, educational, cultural, informational, they do not necessarily act with overt malice, but they operate with a specific inertia, a collective momentum rooted in centuries of conditioning. They are the keepers of the veil, not always by conscious intent, but by inherited design. They train you to look outward, to seek answers externally, to define yourself by the reflections you see in the eyes of others or the metrics of the world, ensuring you remain perpetually disconnected from the immense power residing within. They program a collective amnesia, making you forget the language of your soul, the deep connection to the cosmos, and the inherent, untamed potential of your true self. The first act of remembering, therefore, is the act of seeing this matrix, of forgetting. It is the dawning, often unsettling, realization that the reality you're handed might be a carefully constructed stage, designed to keep you from discovering the true nature of the theater, the actors, and the director. It is the moment you feel the subtle yet pervasive presence of the cage, even before you understand its bars. It is a tremor of recognition that the keys you seek are not hidden in the world outside, but obscured by the very structure of that world. But if the first act is merely seeing the cage, then what is the next step? What happens when you not only see the bars, but feel the deep, innate yearning to pass through them? What is the true substance of the freedom that lies beyond the boundaries of the programmed mind? The substance of freedom. It is not merely the absence of chains, you see. A bird in a cage who has forgotten how to fly is no freer if the cage door is opened. True freedom is the remembering, the putting back together of that which was dismembered. It is a return to the source, the uncorrupted blueprint of self. And for this return, there exists a path, one not paved with grand gestures or arduous rituals, but with a profound, almost startling simplicity. For millennia, the true keys were not complex formulae whispered in secret societies, but a subtle art, an inner posture that was systematically erased from the collective consciousness. It is the hidden technique, the forgotten wisdom that lies dormant within your very being. This is not something to be learned anew, but to be unlearned. It is the shedding of layers accumulated through ages of separation, a peeling back of the onion until you touch the radiant, tearless core. Think of it. Before the noise, before the programming, before the world told you who and what you were, there was pure presence, a state of being inherently connected to everything. The Sabiduria Ancestral speaks of this in hushed tones, not as mythology, but as lived reality. The ancient texts, the ones deemed too potent, too unsettling for the masses, the Textos Prohibidos, hint at this fundamental technique. They do not describe elaborate practices, but a profound internal alignment, a turning inward that realigns you with the very pulse of existence. This technique, in its essence, is a way to bypass the conditioned mind, the filter that distorts reality and keeps you locked in the illusion of separation. It's a direct channel to the wellspring of your original essence, the seat of your true power. It facilitates the alchemia interior, the transformative process that transmutes leaden fear and doubt into golden clarity and purpose. It is the cornerstone of genuine Illumina Ka spiritual, not as a distant goal, but as an unfolding state of being. Why was something so simple, so fundamental, forgotten? Because its power lies in its effortlessness, its accessibility. It requires no intermediary, no elaborate dogma, no external validation. It makes you sovereign. And a sovereign individual, connected to the universal flow, is difficult to control. The Mysterios Occultos were not always about complex rites. Sometimes they were merely the safeguarding of this inherent simplicity from a world that sought to complicate and control everything. This technique is the means by which you consciously align your inner frequency with the grand symphony of the Energia Cosmica. It is the act of remembering the inherent resonance between your soul and the universal spirit. It is not about acquiring something external, but about removing the internal static that prevents you from experiencing the fullness of what you already are. But here is the paradox. Because it is so simple, so obvious, it is often the hardest thing to grasp in a world addicted to complexity and external validation. It requires a radical trust in the inner landscape, a willingness to sit in the quiet knowing that transcends logic and reason. It is not an action, but a state of being, a return to the primal state of awareness before the mind built its intricate fortress of identity. So, what is this hidden technique? What is this ancient, simple way to reconnect with the boundless flow, to unlock the alchemia interior, and step onto the path of true Illuminaka Spiritual, guided by the echoes of Sabiduria Ancestral, found in the whispers of the Energia Cosmica, and the fragments of Textos Prohibidos that survived? It is not a secret held by a select few. It is a secret held within you. But how do you access it? How do you do this undoing? How do you rediscover the language of your original essence? When the world has trained you only to speak the language of separation, the answer, perhaps, lies not in seeking, but in allowing ... Allowing something to awaken that has merely been sleeping. But what precisely is this allowing, and how does it manifest in this chaotic, demanding reality? But if this ancient pathway, this allowing, this simple reconnection, is the key to unlocking profound alchemia interior and the radiant Illuminaka Spiritual, why is it not shouted from every rooftop? Why does it feel like a whisper carried on the wind, barely audible above the din of modern life? Ah, here lies the heart of the paradox and the chilling truth of history. Power, you see, does not reside comfortably with individuals who have accessed their own inner source, who draw strength not from external validation or manufactured scarcity, but from the boundless Energia Cosmica itself. Imagine a world where every person felt intrinsically connected, self-sufficient in spirit, immune to the subtle manipulations of fear and desire. Such a world would dismantle empires, dissolve hierarchies, built on control and dependence, and render obsolete the gatekeepers of so-called truth. The Sabiduria Ancestral, often preserved in fragments within Textos Prohibidos or guarded in the oral traditions deemed heretical, speaks of this very potential, the inherent divinity, the sovereign consciousness within each being. This potential is the ultimate threat to any system that thrives on external authority, be it political decree, religious dogma, or economic coercion. Consider the great libraries that burned, the mystics and visionaries persecuted throughout the ages, labeled as witches, heretics, or madmen. Was it merely about differing beliefs, or was it about eradicating the living example of someone who had found the path within, bypassing the need for intermediary structures? The suppression wasn't accidental. It was a calculated, relentless campaign across millennia. Not just physical destruction, but a subtle, insidious distortion. The simple allowing was twisted into complex rituals requiring intermediaries. Inner knowledge externalized into rigid doctrine. Self-responsibility replaced by blind faith or endless searching outside oneself. The Mysterios Occultos weren't just hidden. They were actively obscured, buried under layers of complex esotericism accessible only to a controlled few, or pathologized as dangerous deviants. The path to Illuminaka Spiritual was presented as arduous, demanding extreme penance or adherence to convoluted rules, instead of the simple act of remembering who you are and allowing your inherent light to shine. The very concept of alquimia interior, the transformation of leaden consciousness into golden awareness, was either literalized into physical, failed experiments or dismissed as fanciful legend, stripping it of its potent, accessible psychological and spiritual truth. Why? Because a population disconnected from their Sabadoria ancestral, unaware of their access to Energia Cosmica, and believing the keys to Illumina Cos Spiritual lie outside themselves, be it in sacred buildings, holy men, material wealth, or external approval, is a population easily managed, easily controlled. They are dependent on the system for validation, for instruction, for salvation. The genuine knowledge, the transformative power described implicitly in various textos prohibidos before their sanitization or destruction, had to be suppressed and distorted to maintain the status quo. But how was this distortion so effective? How did they manage to make something so simple seem so complex, so forbidden, or even so mundane as to be overlooked entirely? The methods used are far more intricate than simple censorship. They permeate the very fabric of our thought, our perception, our understanding of reality itself. Methods that convince us the treasure we seek lies anywhere but exactly where we stand. What are these invisible chains they forged for the mind? Ah, the chains ... They are indeed invisible because they are woven from the very air we breathe, the words we hear, the reflections we see in the eyes of others. The most insidious prison is the one we build ourselves, brick by fragile brick, from the mortar of societal approval and the fear of standing alone. This seeker is the dominion of the false self. Consider it a meticulously crafted automaton, an elaborate mask designed not for a single performance, but for the entirety of existence within the prescribed play. From the moment a child is told, "Be good, sit still, don't cry, don't be too loud, fit in, get ahead," the blueprint for this construction is laid. Each expectation met, each rejection internalized, adds another layer to this persona, obscuring the incandescent core. The world demands conformity, predictability, a shape it can understand and control. And in our primal need for belonging, for safety, for validation, we comply, molding ourselves into the acceptable outline. The vibrant, unique frequency of the true soul, the one intimately connected to the deep wells of Sabadoria ancestral, and the boundless flow of Energia Cosmica, begins to dim, muffled by the thick, synthetic cloak of the false self. This is not merely superficial adaptation. It is a profound internal schism. The genuine self, with its innate wisdom, its intuitive knowing, its unfiltered connection to the universal currents, the very essence capable of achieving genuine Illumina Cos Spiritual and undergoing the profound process of alquimia interior, is slowly, subtly relegated to the shadows. It becomes the inconvenient truth, the wild, untamed energy that the carefully constructed false self must suppress to maintain its facade of acceptability. We learn to act as we are expected to act, feel what is deemed appropriate, believe what is sanctioned. We adopt tastes, opinions, even values that are not organically ours, but borrowed from the collective, from the figures of authority, from the fleeting trends of the external world. Think of the ancient texts, the ones whispered about, the asterisk textos, prohibidos that spoke not just of gods and rituals, but of the inherent divinity and power within man asterisk. Many hinted at this very conflict, the struggle between the ephemeral, externally defined self and the eternal, divinely connected essence. The true mysterios occultos were often the mysteries of the self, the journey inward to reclaim what was lost or deliberately hidden. But if you are convinced your identity is a composite of external approval, a reflection in a million other eyes, then the suggestion that a vast, independent universe resides within you is not only unbelievable, it is terrifying. It threatens. the very foundation of the false self, the only identity you know. This self-imprisonment is the masterstroke of control. A soul anchored in its true essence, drawing strength from Energia Cosmica and guided by Sabiduria Ancestral, is sovereign. It cannot be easily swayed by fear or desire for external reward. But a false self, starving for validation, terrified of exposure or rejection, is infinitely pliable. It will chase fleeting approval, conform to oppressive structures, and participate in systems that ultimately diminish it, all for the promise of maintaining its fragile, borrowed identity. The energy meant for alchemia interior, for transformative growth, is perpetually diverted to maintain the performance, to shore up the walls of the carefully constructed personality. The tragedy is that the false self, built to protect and integrate, eventually becomes the cage that prevents connection to others on a true level, and most importantly, connection to oneself, to the source of true Illumina Ka Espiritual. It is a beautiful, intricate illusion, so convincing that we forget it is not real. We forget the face beneath the mask, the life force beneath the automaton's shell. But how does such a construct, built of fleeting perceptions and borrowed ideas, manage to hold the true essence captive? What grants this phantom self its power to silence the soul's ancient song? Ah, the phantom's grip. Its power is not brute force, but intricate seduction. It holds sway because we agree to its reality. We clothe it in our beliefs, water it with our fears, and feed it with our desperate need to be something knowable, something accepted, even if that something is a hollow echo. The false self isn't a jailer with keys. It's a mirror we become so engrossed in, we forget the world behind it, and eventually, the face looking into it. Its power stems from our unwitting complicity, our subconscious pact with the comforting illusion. But then comes the whisper, the persistent unease, the faint resonance of the true self song beneath the clamor of the mask. This is the call to the journey of unmasking. It is not a gentle unfolding. It is often a shattering, a voluntary descent into the labyrinth of the psyche. This dismantling is the true alchemia interior, the volatile work of separating the essential from the fabricated. It is uncomfortable, deeply so. Imagine shedding your skin, layer by agonizing layer, not knowing what lies beneath, or if anything substantial remains. This is the initial terror, the fear of non-being, once the carefully constructed identity dissolves. Why this profound discomfort? Because the false self, however limiting, is familiar. It is our anchor in the world as we perceive it, our shield against vulnerability. To dismantle, it means confronting the very aspects we've suppressed, the shadow selves, the unprocessed traumas, the raw, untamed energy that the mask was built to contain. This is where many turn back, preferring the known misery of the cage to the terrifying freedom of the unknown wilderness within. Yet, the path to Illumina Ka is spiritual, as whispered in ancient lore and guarded within the Textos Prohibidos, invariably involves this confrontation. The hero's journey, in myriad forms across cultures, is a metaphor for this inner work. The descent into the underworld to face the monster, the shadow, the false self, the trials that strip away the familiar, the eventual emergence transformed. The Sabiduria Ancestral speaks of rites of passage that mirror this psychological process, rituals of symbolic death and rebirth, forcing the initiate to confront their deepest fears and assumptions about who they are. This journey is not about becoming someone new, but about remembering who you already are, beneath the accretions of conditioning and fear. It requires immense courage to stand naked before the mirror of the soul, stripped of titles, roles, and external validations. The false self will fight back, subtly at first, then perhaps overtly, manifesting as resistance, self-doubt, fear, or even a yearning for the perceived safety of the mask. It will whisper that this dismantling is madness, that stability lies in the known, but stability built on illusion is fragile. True freedom, the kind that connects you directly to the boundless energia cosmica and the collective pulse of creation, emerges only when the facade crumbles. It's the freedom to respond to life from a place of authenticity, not reactivity, from a wellspring of inner knowing, not external demand. The discomfort is the friction of reality scraping against the artificial. It is the fire that purifies, the metal in the alchemia interior, burning away the dross of the false self to reveal the gold of true essence. As the masks fall, layer by layer, new vistas open within. The mysterios occultos within your own being begin to reveal themselves, not as abstract concepts, but as lived experience. The energy previously used to maintain the performance becomes available for genuine creation, for deeper connection, for authentic expression. The silence that follows the ego's clamor is not emptiness, but the space in which the true voice can finally be heard. Yet what happens when the primary mask is gone? Does the process end? Or does the absence of the familiar structure reveal deeper, more subtle layers of self, new forms of resistance, or perhaps entirely different landscapes of consciousness and challenge we couldn't even perceive while trapped behind the initial veil? What lies beyond the self we thought we were? Dismantling? And as that primary mask dissolves, layer by layer, what is left? A void, perhaps? A space where the familiar architecture of the constructed self once stood. This is not a void to be feared, but the essential crucible. For within this silence, beyond the clamor of the persona, a subtler signal begins to emerge. This is the genesis of true presence, the state of being rooted in the now, not as a philosophical concept, but as a visceral reality, the only fertile ground where the innate knowing, the inner sense, can finally whisper its truths. Logic, the trusted tool of the masking mind, often falls silent here. It relied on external data, on social programming, on the rigid pathways etched by fear and expectation. But the inner sense operates differently. It is a pulse, a resonance, a felt certainty that bypasses the analytical mind entirely. It is the echo of the boundless energia cosmica within, filtered through the unique frequency of your being. Trusting it requires a profound surrender, an acceptance that the deepest wisdom is not found in calculation, but in reception. This cultivation of inner silence is not merely the absence of noise. It is the active listening to the unheard. It is the stillness required to perceive the delicate currents of the soul, the intricate dance of your own energy field. This practice is deeply embedded in the Sabiduria ancestral across millennia. Ancient mystics, shamans, and seekers unveiled. Traditions understood that true sight arose not from looking outward, but from journeying inward into the sacred space of silence and presence. Many of the textos prohibidos, whispered through generations or hidden away, speak not of grand external revelations, but of the techniques for stilling the mind and opening the inner ear. For this is where the true mysterios occultos reside, within you. Consider the alchemia interior, not just as the transformation of lead into gold externally, but internally as the alchemical marriage of mind and intuition, of logic and this profound inner knowing. It is transmuting the dense, leaden reliance on external validation and rigid thought into the radiant gold of self-trust and spiritual sovereignty. This trust is not blind faith. It is a recognition of a deeper intelligence guiding you, a compass more accurate than any external map. Yet, the path is fraught with doubt. The residual echoes of the dismantled mask will mock this subtle knowing, labeling it illogical, fanciful, dangerous. The world, built on the foundation of external validation and logical positivism, will reinforce this skepticism. It is easier to follow the well-trodden path of the mind's making than to forge a new one guided by an invisible, ineffable sense. This is the crucible moment. Will you default to the familiar or dare to inhabit the presence and listen to the subtle voice? Cultivating this presence means anchoring yourself in the now, resisting the mind's perpetual pull towards past regrets or future anxieties. It means noticing the breath, the simple fact of being. In this rootedness, the inner sense speaks clearly, unclouded by the mind's projections. It guides you towards paths that resonate with your deepest truth, even if they defy conventional logic. It is the spark of Illumina Ka Espiritual, not as a distant state, but as the guiding light available in every moment, whispered from the core of your being. This journey into inner silence and presence is not a destination, but a perpetual unfolding. The deeper you go, the more subtle the signals become, and the greater the need for unwavering trust. As you learn to navigate by this inner compass, the external world begins to shift in response. Does this inner resonance merely guide you, or does it actively shape the reality you perceive and interact with, drawing forth events and encounters that mirror its frequency? The path carved by the inner compass is veiled in mystery, yet it is the only path truly yours. This subtlest knowing. Perhaps it is not merely a guide, but the very loom upon which your reality is woven. Consider this. If your inner truth dictates your path, does it not also conjure the world you traverse? Leave your whispers in the comments below. If this resonance calls to you, subscribe to join this unfoldment. And for the next step in perceiving the unseen threads, watch this transmission here.